Hey cats, it's Ed, Garden Centre Bud here. I'm back with a review of the latest banger from Saucony, a peek into the future, the ENDORPHIN Pro 4. The flagship marathon shoe from Saucony with quite the update for 2024. Let's take a closer look. Thanks for joining me on the channel once again, it's always appreciated. Be sure to hit that subscribe button, but also give this video a thumbs up like. You can support the channel too by becoming a member or dropping us a super thanks down below. Dankeschön. This is a shoe that Saucony have sent over to me for review, but they're not paying me to make this video, nor will they be vetting my views before my valued viewers get to see them. Stats wise, I've got 249 grams here, or 8.8 ounces, for my UK size 11, US size 12. So it's right down there in terms of super shoe weight. Close really to what we had before in the ENDORPHIN Pro 3. Slightly heavier by a few grams, though that could be down to production variants. There's a strong smell of garden centre or calamine lotion here. And if you like that sort of thing, as I do, then your quid's in. There's a soft PEBA based foam here. I've got a short A durometer reading of about 24. No surprise it is that PEBA blend, but it is slightly more resilient than Nike's Zoom X stuff. It's in a pellet-like form, similar I guess if you've seen something like the Boost material used in Adidas shoes. There is a slightly denser feel to the Saucony stuff, but it really is durable. I've got about 43mm measurement here in stack in the heel, and around about 35mm in the forefoot. Makes for an 8mm drop. I just can't help but see a certain symbol here. It really is quite odd. 8mm is what Saucony suggest on their website, so I guess my measurements must be pretty accurate. We've got 11.2 centimeters here in the forefoot and about 9.1 in the heel. So it's a slightly wider version of Saucony's standard marathon profile. This certainly feels like a slightly sleeker shoe in hand though, and certainly underfoot, but I'll get to that in a minute. There's certainly some tougher rubber though here in the ENDORPHIN Pro 4. I'm measuring a Shore durometer reading of about 70 here, which is quite the change over the last stuff. We'll start with the upper first. So an engineered mesh here in the ENDORPHIN Pro 4. It's got this odd sort of hexagonal pattern, reminds me of a beehive. Does mean we've still got an incredibly breathable shoe here. Perhaps not quite as breathable as the fishing net style upper we had in the last one. Though the big change here is with that integrated very stretchy tongue through the middle section of the shoe. It's topped with a really cool flap here at the end. You can get it in this configuration here, or you can flip it over and you've got like the Saucony logo. Reminds me a little bit of the Puma King. I was a real big fan of that boot back in the 90s. Some viewers have suggested you could use it as extra lace protection there, but I kind of think it looks pretty cool, either flap down or just as it is now. I have to say this shoe does look really nice in terms of the profile. I think it could become like a classic Saucony look in many years to come. You could also use this, I guess, as a pull tab of sorts. There's no need for one in the heel here whatsoever. Now, you're either a big fan of lace loop eyelets here, as I am in this version of the shoe. We do have some standard ones here though for the final eyelets. That mesh in the tongue does fold over itself, it does bunch up a little bit, perhaps if you have a narrow foot, but it still creates a really good lockdown over the top of the foot. After all, you know, this is a marathon racing shoe. It's for going all out. Do be aware that the heel counter here in the back of the ENDORPHIN Pro 4 is quite low profile. That rear section of the shoe, you can't rely on it too much to create the lock. I have been using a runner's knot and I found the fit very good. Doesn't seem to change all that much either. There's very little break-in required for the upper. Is the shoe true to size? Yes, I'd suggest going for your typical Saucony sizing. A UK 11 is absolutely perfect for me. Is it a little bit more forgiving in the toe box? I would suggest yes, it is slightly more forgiving, not quite as narrow and drawn in as previous versions. The laces used here, which contrast really nicely. I think it really works with this sort of, I was going to say a swoosh then. There's a little bit of stretch to them, and I think that's kind of needed actually. If you're doing a long, hot, grueling marathon, your foot's no doubt going to expand a little bit over time, and everything here in the upper is just going to give a little bit. It's got a little bit of stretch to it. I absolutely love the suede elements that Saucony have included here in the ENDORPHIN Pro 4. It kind of feels old school yet modern. I don't know how they've managed to do that, you know, putting all these elements together. I gotta say, I love the colorway here, the black currant of the inner heel collar, the orange and red pop from the laces, and that sort of off-white suede as well. It just really does things for me. I think this is probably one of the slightly wider versions of the Endorphin Pro we've had. There's some decent height here in the toe box too, though again you don't want masses of that in your race shoe, do you? I really love the Fast R Nitro Elite 2 from Puma. For that same reason really, it was just the right amount of toe box height and width. Just feels like a shoe you want to get on for your faster, more premium training sessions and those target races too. Now, one slight issue here I have found with the lacing on the shoe: as you cinch the laces in, the tongue kind of pulls in on top of the foot, and the areas that do feature the suede here tend to stick out a little bit. I guess you can kind of see it here actually, these pieces just sort of stick out. Once you've actually laced the shoe up though, it doesn't really affect you too much. I do think the suede is actually a functional feature here. It does help to protect the foot a little bit from the lace pressure. I found it pretty comfortable with any sock thickness so far. I think I've done about 13 or so miles in the shoe and it's really comfortable. I think if you have an extremely narrow foot, you might find there's a little bit too much bunching here in the tongue, and in fairness there's quite a lot of excess lace length, especially if you're gonna just use a standard bow. But it's very comfortable so far. It's not really an awful lot I would change about the upper. They really have perfected it here in the 4th iteration. I'm going to give the Endorphin Pro 4 a 2.9 out of 3 for the upper after my initial runs. Midsole, midsole, midsole now. Midsole wise, there's certainly some softness here from the Endorphin Pro 4 and some considerable squash there in the heel, but I would suggest this version with the added PWRRUN HG foam. There's like a top layer, is a little bit more responsive than past versions have been. As you put in more effort and increase the pace, the shoe really does start to come into its own. It's quite dynamic really, not just soft and squashy, it isn't just compressive like the Pro 3 was. Now, I did enjoy that shoe, but I think that one's perhaps better for me for like full marathon pace. I think this one's actually better across a range of paces now. It's a little bit more usable as a versatile tool. I tried some 400-meter repeats at an unsustainable pace, some 1k reps, and also some mile efforts too at roundabout sort of marathon pace for me, and the shoe feels absolutely fantastic, I have to be honest. Sometimes the nemesis of any super shoe is actually how they perform at those sort of 5 and 10k efforts. I think this one returns that energy a little bit faster. It's a little bit more dynamic now. The denser PWRRUN PB material, I say denser, it is very forgiving, but it's a little bit denser and firmer. There's not quite as much compression as in some of the other foams. It's always been good for me really at that sort of half marathon or marathon pace. This one I feel I could run, you know, even like a 5k in it. I think with a very low weight top layer of the PWRRUN HG, it has sort of enhanced the shoe somewhat. Just a more usable option now at those faster turnover type speeds. Again, on cornering I found the shoe wasn't all that compressive. Still feels nice and stable actually, perhaps more stable than it was before. Just feels like you got a little bit more spring and push from the midsole this time around. Now, I find the foam here in the shoe to be very durable over time. In every iteration I've had no issues with it tearing or anything. And in terms of an outside usage factor, I think that's really important. Perhaps if you run on a treadmill a lot, then actually the shoe's going to be fantastic. It's going to go on for miles and miles. There's just a bit more of that midsole here as well, and PWRRUN HG is stupendously resilient. Though I think from a general runner perspective, I think more and more people will enjoy this one now and find it to be a very usable option. If you're a fan of the Endorphin Pro series, you're only gonna like this even more. Certainly an interesting redesign, especially with these fins here. I feel they do create a slightly more compressive feel. They get you onto the forefoot that a little bit quicker. And all in all, the shoe feels a little bit lower in terms of profile than the Endorphin Pro 3. It's a kind of return really to what made the V1 so good in the first place. I think the stability does come in this shoe from the sort of filled in heel area. They've weight relieved it here in the midfoot, but everything else is filled in, and of course the carbon plate here does provide some pop on toe off. Is there anything I would change here? Well, I do think the rear fins here are going to be a point of anxiety for some people, thinking they're going to like catch them on something. I just say, please, whatever you do here, make sure you take your shoes off in a sensible way. Don't use the back of the heel to take your shoe off. Undo the laces and take them off. You know, they're an expensive shoe, so look after them. Versatility here and very durable. I'm going to give the Saucony Endorphin Pro 4 a 3 out of 3 for me. Can't really go much wrong with this one if you're after a really light super shoe. Outsole now, it's been updated, and that was one of the main bugbears I had with the ENDORPHIN Pro 3. It's a tougher rubber, measuring about 70 on the short A durometer scale, and there's a new pattern here. It really is a lot more aggressive here in the forefoot. There's lots of fins, lots of ridges, and I really like it. Works really well to provide some good grip and push off on the road and pavements. I also found it to be great on the treadmill too. Putting quite a few miles there. On some faster moments, the toe off is great. I love the fact that they've expanded the rubber way back into the heel on both the lateral and the medial sides. It comes right back here. Thank you, Saucony. Really is a top plan to improve the durability of the foam here. The longevity of the Pro 4 is going to be right up there. I also think that it makes it a slightly better option for a variety of different foot strikes. I think that's a bit of a plan, really, to try and bring the Pro 4 to the masses. Love it when a plan comes together. Yes, the plate is exposed here, but the carving is quite chamfered, really, hopefully to avoid the ingesting of any rocks or debris, which can sometimes be a bit of an issue, and you don't want that to sort of stop you from reaching your PR. I can see this one actually being much better in wet conditions. I will get out there and test that out a little bit more over time. The previous traction pattern on the ENDORPHIN Pro 2 and the 3 wasn't the greatest, and especially in the UK where you get some bizarre weather, like 1 minute it's at 15 degrees and nice and sunny, the next minute you've got some terrible wind and rain, and that can happen during a race too. I'm going to give the ENDORPHIN Pro 4 a 2.9 out of 3 for the outsole after my initial runs. Value now. As I stated, this is a shoe that Saucony have sent over to me for review. Not being paid to make this video though. I have to say the retail price there is where you'd expect it really for a super shoe. If you're buying one of these, to do a marathon later in the year, perhaps you're doing a load of racing, I actually think it's a slightly better value purchase now because you can use it for a little bit more. Also, you don't have to worry too much about PWRRUN PB in terms of it tearing or ripping. It's not Zoom X, that's for sure. And quality of the shoe out the box is smashing. There's no dodgy glue marks. Feels like there's been a bit of care taken to actually put the shoe together. I'll level with you, I've got a pair of the VAPORFLY 3. The Proto colorway recently came in. A runner bought a couple of pairs, different sizes, and wanted to shift one of them. I have to say, it is really shoddy in terms of build quality. It's terrible. There's glue all over it, misaligned pieces, the foam's creased up, just reeks of cost-cutting measures, and I hear that with standard kind of lifestyle Nike shoes too. People ordering like 1 or 2 pairs and having to send them all back because they're just really poorly put together. That isn't what you've got here in the ENDORPHIN Pro 4. I think as a marathon option or a super shoe racer, the Saucony crew have really got it together this time. Though of course, with that type of shoe always comes a price. The fit's far better on the ENDORPHIN Pro 4 than on the VAPORFLY 3. I'd say it's on par really with the Farstar Nitro Elite 2 from Puma, and it's coming in that bit lighter than the Puma offering too. The upper is better in terms of fit than the Adios Pro 3. Lockdown easily achieved here without too much stress and messing around with those initial eyelets. Outsole grip is now on par with the Puma and Adidas stuff. This in some way feels like a more maximalised version of the Metaspeed Sky Plus from Asics, though it's a lot more forgiving in terms of the underfoot feel. Very little to dislike here. I mean, the price is what it is. You would have to score all super shoes down if you were going to really, punish them on price. And at least it's, the right side of 230 quid. I'll give this one a 2.8 out of 3 for value, only lowered due to the classic narrower fit. It's not going to perhaps facilitate all feet, though it is improved a little bit this time round in terms of wider foot. If I've totaled the scores up together correctly, that gives us 11.6 out of 12 after my initial runs for the Saucony ENDORPHIN Pro 4. Are you a big ENDORPHIN Pro fan? Will you be picking up this shoe? It is a fantastic runnable shoe, straight out the box, hasn't needed too much break-in. I'm finding it extremely versatile too. Let me know your thoughts and opinions on this one down in the comments. Very quick musical interlude for you. I dug out the Live in '99 George Thorogood and the Destroyers DVD. They should really team up with George and do like a ES copy here. I love that guitar sound that he's got with the P90s. Loads of the classics on here and some of his sort of lesser known material too. But the Bo Diddley covers are always the best from George Thorogood. We've got Who Do You Love on here, which is absolutely stonking. One of the Destroyers staples, really, from their shows. Move It On Over, though, is my favourite. I think, was it a Hank Williams track? Not entirely sure, but there's loads of versions of that. I've got another live version, I think, which was from the 80s sometime, which is absolutely jaw-dropping. The reason I love this concert so much, it was recorded very near to what is my birthday in June, I think over in St. Louis somewhere, and it's got that vibe all about it. The classic Hank Carter on the saxophone, producing some fantastic sounds. Go and check it out if you can find it somewhere, probably in a bargain bin, but it shouldn't be, it's brilliant. George Thorogood and the Destroyers live in '99. Thanks for tuning in, people. Hope you enjoyed the Endorphin Pro 4 review. I've enjoyed running in it, that's for sure. Loads of races coming up as well where I can test that shoe out, in the wild. Hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up like. My name's EDDBUD and I'll be seeing you